Hair discrimination. It's gone on for centuries, and now, finally, there's a push to pass the Crown Act on a national level. It would give people protection, especially in the workplace, against race-based hairstyle and hair texture discrimination. That would stretch across not only employment, but housing, education, and any programs that receive federal funds. The Crown Act passed the House in 2022, and now the Senate has to take action. But that hasn't stopped advocates passionate about freedom to wear their hair naturally. In the Virgin Islands, there's a move to pass the Crown Act there. What some people don't know is the Virgin Islands population is 76% black, but most of the businesses are not black-owned, and a lot of workers do face hair discrimination. Senator Alma Francis Heyliger and advocates are working to change that. Joining me now is Senator Francis Heiliger. She represents the Virgin Islands and has made some critical changes in advancing the Crown Act. Senator Francis Heyliger, thank you for joining me today. Talk a little bit about why it was so important in the Crown Act to recognize the various textures of hair that exist in Black people.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak on the Crown Act. It is so important because it's a natural God-given thing. The fact that we were born the way that we are, we should never live in a society where we decide that someone should be discriminated against or someone should be isolated or said you're not enough or less than just because of their hair or hair texture or hair styles. So that was one of the things that I recognized as a representative that we really needed to focus on when we're trying to look at the definition of race, to not only limit it to, okay, it's the skin tone, but also a lot of times the discrimination follows over to your hairstyle and your hair texture that you're also born with.
And what you're suggesting is a change that would actually go into the definition of how the United States defines civil rights.
Exactly. Do you think it's fair for someone to just wake up one day and say, you know what? It's not right within our society to say, I don't like you because of your skin tone. It's not right to do that to a person. But in our society, as we move away from certain things and we almost mask it and say, well, okay, society said this is not a good thing for us to do up front. We're going to figure out another way how to discriminate against someone. So guess what? We don't like their hair texture. We don't like the way that their hair that naturally grows from their hair looks. So therefore, that's another way to treat them in a way that we should never be treating each other as human beings.
Mm-hmm. There's also another change that you're recommending, and that is an amendment to take out references to creed and culture. So many people do see their hair as part of their way of life. So why is that change important?
Well, with us, if we're trying to focus on understanding what the definition of race is, culture is a narrative that's individual, because I could be born and raised into a specific culture, and that could change depending on where I might live, depending on who my parents are, how I was raised. And that's something that's not definitive just based on genetics. Race is, your hair texture is. And that's one of the reasons, if we're going to attach it to race, we have to recognize that they're separate things.
I'm appreciating the nuance you're bringing to this conversation about Black hair. Where is this now going at the federal level?
Well, I know Congressman Cory Booker has been moving it through Congress, and I can't remember the name of the committee it was last in, but it is currently within one of the committees as he continues to try to push it through on a federal level. But we here, whether it's the states and the territories, we're working on seeing how much we can do on a local level while he battles that nationally within Congress. We can see what we can do within our own states and municipalities as well as our own territories.
And so is what you're doing in the Virgin Islands a blueprint of what other localities can do? What would you suggest other towns and cities carry forward?
Well, there are several other cities that have already done this, other states. I know California, for example, I'm just giving you. But this is, for me, something that must be done. I think for me, this coalition that has been formed through the Dove Corporation and many other coalition members, to include whether the NAACP, several sorority organizations, we see this as something, as it has to be a way of protection for people that were born Black, that were born with specific hair textures, that were born with things that you can't now decide that I'm not going to allow you to advance in a job because your hair looks a specific way. I, a lot of times I tell people, we don't have control when we're born. We don't have control how we're even created. So, how do we now come into a society that now says that because you were born a specific way, we get to pick and choose how your life is going to be based on your genetic aspects? And I hope that the other 14 states that have already enacted some form of the Crown Act, many of them continue to push forward, as well as the other states that have legislation going through their chambers, as well as even here in my territory, the Virgin Islands, where it's going through the process as well.
Senator Francis Heiliger, representing the Virgin Islands, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a local perspective on the importance of appreciating and recognizing Black hair.
Thank you so much for inviting me.